I'm speaking with
Dan Arkind from JobScore.
Dan, one of the most outspoken guys I know in the recruiting space, gave some great tips about recruiting hacks for engineers. One of the ones you brought up was trying to find out if the engineer knows what you know and why that's a monstrous mistake.
Well, I don't know if it's a monstrous mistake. I wouldn't say trying to figure that out is a monstrous mistake, but one of the challenges of engineering recruiting is actually that many engineers recruit in their own context. So, or another way to put it, which is not that nice, is to say that you're lazy. So what happens is there's stuff that you and your team know and you know very well and you use every day, and therefore you try to assess people against that. But that's actually not fair. What's fair is actually to understand and assess the engineer against what the tools that they're using and their context. Right? So what you want to do is level the playing field and not figure out if they're an expert in what you know, but if they're an expert in what they know, or if they have the ability to climb the curve quickly and be effective in a more level playing field exercise.
You were also mentioning that people have, I guess, an unclear understanding of what recruiting or the hiring process is, and getting a referral or a hiring referral can just be getting connected to a person of which you may be hiring much further down the road. Explain.
Well, you know, to use some David Mamet, he says always be, closing, you need to always be recruiting. And one of the things about referral hiring is that you are really sort of, what you want people to do is to want to work with you is one of the key things, and you should always be conscientious of that, or try to be, as you meet new people who are in your industry who you might want to work with. The second part of it is really just about how to drive conversations with people. And a lot of hiring and referral-driven conversations aren't about asking who's looking for a job. It's actually about finding someone who's knowledgeable in a particular topic, or who has a particular skill set, or who's passionate about something that you and your team are passionate about that you know is going to mesh well. So instead of saying, hey, do you know an unemployed engineer who wants a job? It's, hey, do you know an engineer who's passionate about the same topic that we are? And use that as a basis to start talking to that person and develop a relationship, as opposed to really treating referrals and hiring as a purely transactional activity of like, we need someone this month.
One of the other things that we had talked about actually a long time ago when you and I sat down was about sitting down with an engineer and looking at their contacts. And you were saying, well, that's a good idea. I'd be very wary of doing something like that. But it seems it was necessary because engineers don't necessarily think, oh, I'm looking for talent. I can right now go through my whole Rolodex and tell you who you should hire.
Well, it's not just engineers. It's everybody. And a lot of recruiting can be viewed as very transactional and either dishonest. Unfortunately, it's a sort of a profession with a stigma. But engineers in particular are sensitive to people really just sort of going ramshod through their network, and particularly bugging people someone who they don't trust or like. So you absolutely, people who aren't professional networkers or salespeople won't necessarily volunteer their contacts as readily as others might, but they're also a little more wary in making the introduction. So you need to build up some trust before you ask those questions. You're going to need to get to know the person. They're going to need to understand why you're asking for referrals. They're going to need to understand why someone would be interested. They're going to need to feel that you will make a good impression. And once you get past all those hurdles and build that trust, if you ask someone to open up their network, they'll do it gladly and effectively, and you can get them, and you can get the person who has the connection to be an ally in the recruiting process as a recruiter, as opposed to someone who's hesitant to connect to.
Dan, as always, thanks a ton.
My pleasure. Thanks, David. Great job.